and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Well, welcome to a very special episode of the Ruthless Variety Program. John Ashbrook, Josh Holmes, comfortably smug. Michael Duncan, left to right across your radio dial. We're in a little different position here, but for good reason. We're in Michigan, fellas.
That's right. And we had promised everyone we're going to have a very special surprise for them.
Yeah.
And we certainly do.
And we do. As you are watching this, we just finished up our fishing trip with J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
And look, he's had a very big week. We're very happy to have him. But what better way to come down from kicking the ass of Tim Walz than a little fishing, maybe a little salmon and some camaraderie with the fellas, right?
We had such a great time. And I mean, this is an animal podcast. This is a politics podcast. This podcast is a lot of things. And it's about to turn into a fishing show.
Yeah, it is.
Which is sort of a dream.
It totally is. And so what you're going to see with us here today, JD comes in after our fishing trip, and we're going to have a long-form discussion about the week, about the race, about a little bit about sportsman issues, a whole bunch of stuff. I think you're going to love every second of it. And fellas, we had a good time, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, great time. And it's great to get the perspective of JD after that debate. I mean, this is a big get for the Ruthless Variety Program.
It is.
And to get his off-the-cuff, comments about how he was feeling in the moment and all of that sort of stuff. It's just incredible.
Yeah, first major interview after putting this race down.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 50 million people watching the vice presidential debate.
Yeah.
That's an extraordinarily huge number.
It's a lot more than Tim Walz was hoping would be watching.
No question about it. So sit back, enjoy, relax, as this is live to tape at 5 o'clock. But we're hoping to stick around. We got some travel arrangements, but hopefully we're going to be in your YouTube comments and being able to answer any questions that you have as you are watching. So thanks for joining us. Well, look, we've got a really special guest here, and it's been a big week for the man. But we just had a fishing trip. J.D. Vance, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I'm excellent. We had some fun out there, didn't we?
We did have some fun. We didn't catch any fish unless you count the frozen dead fish.
I got a couple.
But no, it was really fun. We took, as you know, I'm sure the clips will show, we took my 4-year-old out there, and I was actually really curious whether he would have fun or just be like, what the hell are we doing?
Get me off of this
He
thing.
loved it.
Yeah, he had a
He was
blast.
having a good time, so it was good.
Well, it was nice that these guys tried to cheat their way into victory by having frozen fish reeled up. So at least your son could see fish.
Well, I mean, my first thought when I saw the fish being reeled was like, it's not moving. Is it normal for a fish who's just gotten caught? Like,
Early morning.
I've caught enough fish to know that normally they fight at least a little bit. Yeah, like maybe. Yeah,
It was an early morning. It was a cold lake.
Or something. But then I was like, there's no way that they would throw a ringer out there, that they would bring a dead frozen fish just to win the fishing competition. But I clearly overestimated
We didn't really have a choice. We had everything short of a carrier group out there, for security.
Yeah, no, I think in our defense, as our skill as fishermen, I think it's probably hard to catch a fish when you have like
An armada?
like a literal armada floating around. We're like Kalamazoo River, right? And the 45-foot Coast Guard boat with a saw machine gun.
Yeah.
Pretty cool to look at.
Yeah, it was very cool to look at, but it probably didn't help the fish. So anyway.
Well, listen, I mean, I'm glad we could get you away from things just for a moment to try to get some clean air and whatever. You had a
very
huge
nice.
week with a absolute butt kicking, I can say it so you don't have to, of Tim Walz on the VP debate stage. I mean, I said this to you on the boat, but I really mean it. Like, I think you might have earned his vote that night. He was nodding along with almost everything you said.
I hope so, man. We'll take every vote we can get. Tim, if you're listening, you're welcome to vote for us. You don't have to tell anybody about it. But I think we actually have a good shot in Minnesota. It's an outside chance, but we've got a shot in Minnesota. I mean, look, it was such a crazy week. My team, when they first brought this to me, and were like, well, what about doing this thing? They were very nervous. Well, it's a couple days after the debate. Like, are you really going to go fishing after the debate? It's like, of course I want to go fishing after the debate. Like, that's the one thing I'd actually like to do after the debate. But I'm glad you guys took me out. And, it's sort of one of these things we try to do is, because we have such young kids, 7, 4, and 2, is bring my son out with me or bring one of them out with me. And so, we we did the whole hotel thing. He got to watch a movie. He got to eat a lot of junk food that Mom wouldn't normally let him eat. So
did he sleep
it was overall
perpendicular
good.
in the bed with
Oh
you
my
last
God,
night?
yeah. So
That's what my kids
It's like
do.
we have a king size bed. I'm on one little corner of it, and he still finds some way to sleep with his like foot in my neck this night. So if I'm like a little underslept this morning because of that. But I mean, the debate was so much fun, and I was telling Josh this earlier on the boat, like, you don't really know when you're doing this because your adrenaline's going, you're
Right.
trying not to say anything stupid. You don't actually know how it's going, really. Like, I felt pretty good about it, but my wife comes out at the very end, just as sort of like this one final, segment for the TV cameras. When Walz comes up and my wife comes up, and I look at Usha's face, and I just knew. I was like, oh, shit.
Nice.
We must have done a very good job, because Usha doesn't lie to me,
Yeah.
and her face especially doesn't lie to me, and I knew that minute that we had a very good debate. And of
Nobody
course-
gives you authenticity like
Exactly.
a wife, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I had a
Exactly
question.
right.
My question was, how does it feel to kill a man live on stage? Because you had to have known eventually when his eyes were bugging out. And it was just, to me, and seeing the reaction online, the first 5 minutes, I think it was already over.
I mean, it definitely, the first answer, because it was about the attacks on Israel and how Israel should respond, and I definitely realized, like, he was extremely nervous.
He said fundamental 3 times in 20 seconds.
That's normally a tell.
And then he talked about
But-
Israel proxies. Yeah.
It's like, huh?
Yeah, so there's definitely, I could tell he was nervous,
Yeah.
but again, you can't really tell how nervous, like how you're doing, because I'm nervous as hell, right?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like I get nervous at these things, and so you can't really tell how it's actually going. Like I didn't think that I had said anything bad. I thought that I had said, in fact, a number of good things. So I did feel pretty good about it. The one thing I didn't realize, this thing that's gone super viral of me kind of doing the Jim from The Office thing, like looking into the camera.
That's what I was thinking. Is like, you have to have known, like, can you believe how easy this is?
But it's because I wish I could take credit for it, but it's because the timer is right by the camera. So I was just, I was trying to pay attention to what he's saying, but then you have to be ready for like when his time's up, because then it's your turn to speak. And so I was looking at the timer to figure out I was about to speak.
Amazing.
I know, but it spawned a million viral memes. So I'm glad they did it like that.
I think I saw you give Smug a similar look when he walked up with the frozen fish.
We know that came out the freezer.
The full broken fourth wall. Oh man, I think the thing that was most impressive. I mean, look, a lot of us have done a lot of these things and debate preps and things like that, and it's one thing to have the right answers, which you did, and it's better when it's authentic, which it is. The thing that is so impressive about what you did in that debate is you say you're nervous. You look so composed. Your tone, your tenor, the way you were delivering it, it was like a man at total peace with what he was talking about. And I think that conveys, right? I mean, it turns out there's over 50 million people watching the damn thing.
Yeah.
So,
Which I'm glad I didn't know then. 'Cause-
yeah, seriously.
But so I definitely, again, I felt good about it. I think nerves are a good thing, actually.
Yeah.
It's good to sort of
Keeps you sharp.
keeps you sharp, keeps you focused. That's fundamentally a good thing. But it's funny, we went into it, and I think they thought our strategy was just going to be to go after Walz, for like, the military record dishonesty, and there's like the Tiananmen Square thing. That was like that was the one moment where I realized, okay, he's clearly very uncomfortable.
No, he didn't need your help. He buried himself on that.
It's like the old Sun Tzu quote, right? Like when your enemy's making a mistake, don't interrupt them. I was just like, shut up. That was the mental process I had. It's like, do not say a damn thing, JD. Silence. But actually, President Trump and I were talking about this sort of about a week before the debate. It's like, okay, why go after Tim Walz when people are primarily voting for Kamala Harris or against Kamala Harris or
That
for
makes
Donald
sense.
Trump or against Donald Trump? And importantly, unlike with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, where everybody has an opinion about these guys, right? Like, it's very hard. I mean, you guys are all like political professionals. Like, what negative advertisement is a person going to see about Donald Trump? Everybody has an opinion about him one way or the other, but people really don't know Kamala Harris.
Right.
And it's kind of surprising to those of us who live and breathe politics, but a lot of people still don't realize, like, she's the sitting vice president. She bears the responsibility, in some cases even casting the tie-breaking vote on some of these policies. So, like, why not use this as an opportunity to get the word the word out about who Kamala Harris really is. And so because of that, I was like, I don't really have to like debate Tim Walz.
Yeah.
I'm really going to debate Kamala Harris. And even sometimes where I think Tim had taken like a position oppositional to Kamala Harris, like why don't highlight that as an example of her radicalism rather than get in a back and forth with Tim Walz?
Yeah, and you
I
said
think
it
that was the
best.
right. I think ultimately that was the right strategy. I mean, I was a little bit worried going into it that like he's just going to attack me and I'm not going to respond to it. It's like hey, he's going to call me an asshole and I'm going to be like, the real asshole is Kamala Harris.
Right.
But, like so does that like not work actually in the debate moment? But I actually think it did work. And,
did
and I'm
work.
glad we did it.
You were honest. You were like, Tim, you had a hard job tonight.
That was
Right? Because they're trying to pull this magic trick where she's the change agent candidate.
That's right.
And not the current vice president of the United States. And, you have the last 4 years of Donald Trump being president of the United States you can point to as a record of success. So, like, yeah, it was a little tough for the guy.
Yeah. Well, that was the one thing. I think it was in the Israel-Iran answer where he's like, Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon, and this is all Donald Trump's fault. Wait a second. Donald Trump was president like 4 years ago. Do you have any idea who's been running the country for the last 3.5 years? Like, I'll give you a wild guess. It's the person who's at the top of the ticket for you guys. And it does illustrate. I mean, again, you guys know this stuff better than I do, but like sometimes in races, it's really complicated. It's really hard. If you're the incumbent party and the economy is really bad, that's a tough
sell.
product to sell. Well, they're the incumbent party and the economy's bad, I think, because of their policies. So,
And they've done everything
it's
they
just,
can do to get out from underneath
Exactly.
that, by the way. They're trying to pretend like she's just showed up yesterday.
That's absolutely right. Well, and it's the bait and switch here is really fascinating, right? Because when Biden was the candidate, I'd watch these like Sunday shows, and you'd have people going on and be like, "Oh no, inflation's great. Like things are starting to look really good, and the economy's doing wonderful, and here are all these great things that Joe Biden did." And then the minute Kamala becomes the candidate, they're all like, "Oh, Joe Biden was a terrible president. He had nothing to do with him." But it's just, again, it doesn't pass the smell test for most Americans, and we're just going to find out November 5th. But I think it does give us a much better argument.
No question about
Another
it.
thing that really stood out to us, we talked about it on our show earlier this week, is how much you listened to what Walz was saying. So many of these people go into a debate and they get their canned lines and they try to deliver them and their mind is off. But you were so well prepared. You knew exactly what you were going to say about every single thing that you were able to listen to him and interact with him in a way that I think stood out for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I think when I go into these things, I try not to do the slogan thing. I try not to do the can line thing. I try to actually answer the questions, which in some cases, I think I probably try too hard to answer the question, especially when it's like an unfair question, because sometimes you just got to say, that's a stupid question. Like, let's talk about things that the American people actually care about.
Particularly when the opposition, every question they're asked, they tell you about their growing up with streetlights and bicycles.
Hey, he's proud of that record of service.
So you definitely obviously have to hit your themes, and there are things that you want to. There's a message that you want to deliver to the American people, and you have to not try to get knocked off balance. But I do think it's important to actually just listen to what people are talking about and responding to it. And I think it's one of the things that people really are turned off by with Kamala Harris, right? It's like, what is your specific plan to solve the inflation crisis? And it was like, oh, I grew up in a middle class family, or I worked at McDonald's and I was really good at making the hash browns. It's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Can you imagine like ordering a sandwich somewhere and they're like, well, I live in a middle class family and I'm from it's like, just give me the bologna sandwich.
Right. Yeah, so this is a Wendy's. But it does, I think it does drive home that just being responsive is just a breath of fresh air in politics in the 21st century. And so I definitely just, I try to do that. And it also, look, Tim, you go into this debate, right? And Tim and I both know, like, this is not, you're not playing to your base. You got 50 million plus people watching you. Like, you're trying to make a pitch to undecided voters, right? So he's going to say a lot of things where even sometimes explicitly he's going to agree with Donald Trump's policies. So rather than being like, no, you're wrong, we're like, oh yeah, you made a really good point there, but here's why that point has nothing to do with Kamala Harris's policies. And that's what I kept on trying to take it
And
back
that's the
to.
listening component that you were talking about.
Yeah.
It really stood out.
No, I appreciate you guys noticing that, because that's definitely something I try to do when I do these things, is just actually listen, have a conversation with people.
Like normal humans?
Yeah, like normal humans.
Yeah.
Right? It sounds so unusual coming from a person running for high office, but it is, I think, again, I think our policies should be much better and a lot smarter,
Yeah.
and people would feel less icky about it if we were actually having a conversation, which unfortunately we just don't enough.
That's really well said. So one of the reasons why we wanted to do this in Michigan and we wanted to go fishing, like, look, Michigan, incredibly important state, right? You
course.
spend a lot of time here.
Maybe the most important state.
It could be.
It's up there.
It could be. But there's a ton of sportsmen here.
Yeah.
Hunting, fishing. This has been a group that historically has huge amounts of people who have hunting licenses and fishing licenses
Yep.
who don't vote. And so we wanted to have an opportunity for you to do what you do, because you grew up fishing.
Yep.
And you grew up with this kind of culture and understanding the culture of people who own guns and people
Sure.
who go fishing and things like that. And I just think, like, we had a blast today and it was super authentic.
Yeah.
And you probably don't get a ton of that opportunity out in them.
No, I mean, it's one thing I love being out on the campaign trail, but you do get precious few opportunities to interact with like real human beings, right? And we were talking with Joe from the Safari Club, and of course, the folks who actually were running the charter company that took us out today, and just hearing about the challenges of their business, like, oh, fuel goes up by a huge amount, and now all of a sudden a fishing charter that would have cost $500 now costs $1,200. Like, that crushes their business, and it's of course great to be able to hear those stories, but just on the fishermen, on the games and like issue, like, I think something people don't fully appreciate is, especially far lefties who pretend to care about the environment, is they assume that these guys just want to take from the environment. Right? They want to kill every animal, they want to get every fish out of the lake, and they want to take them home, and they don't think about conservation, when in reality, the people who are hunting and fishing, they care the most about conservation. They care about the balance, I think, more than people who never spend any real time in the environment. And we were talking about this a little bit. I mean, it's an issue I learned totally for the first time about, is that when Donald Trump, his first administration, they were trying to take the gray wolf off the endangered species list, right? And, okay, the reason is the gray wolf population in Michigan has now done very well. It's kind of stabilized, right? The problem is they're trying to get the moose population up, and the courts have made it impossible for them to take the gray wolves off the endangered species list. So you've got the wolves that are like fishing in a barrel, can just go and obliterate the moose population, right? I'm not like, I'm not like a strong moose partisan, but I kind of like the balance. And
It's a big moose guy.
kind of a bull moose party kind of guy. But the thing that is crazy is these guys know better than anybody that if you want to protect the natural environment, you've got to preserve that balance. So we were in a season where we needed to protect the gray wolves. Now we're in a new season where we need to protect the moose, and you need a government that's responsive to that conservation effort, and you just don't have that.
No.
And so, I mean, look, if you're listening and you're a hunter or a fisherman, like, we could do a lot better. And I think one of the things that we'd like to do is be the kind of administration that actually listens to the people who are most connected to these problems and has a pragmatic approach to this stuff. Not, we're going to protect the gray wolves at all costs, such that the moose are being decimated. Or even, we heard one of the guys tell this story, and I think he had read it on the news. It wasn't a personal story, that somebody, like, some kids were out hunting ducks or doing something, and like the gray wolves set upon them. And it's like, holy shit, now we have to deal with gray wolves. Like, again, protect the gray wolf population, but within reason. And unfortunately, you just don't have an administration under Kamala Harris that ever operates within reason.
No, because it's like Brooklyn lefties that are pretending to understand the woods.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which is like, it's like anything. Drop a dozen gray wolves in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and these guys will get very serious about the gray wolf population.
We got a big wolf problem, folks. So I imagine, look, your schedule is going to be jam-packed.
It's nuts. Yeah.
I mean, I think you were saying you've been in like 7 states in the last week.
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I feel like we normally hit the battleground states about every one of them. Sorry, we hit each battleground state every other week or so. And then obviously me, just because I'm closer, but also because, we're sort of really making a play for Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I'm just in those 3 states all the time. Right?
Yeah.
I think,
Which is sort of convenient.
Yeah, it's
given
very
the fact that you live in Ohio.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's a short flight. You can hit a lot of spots at once, and then obviously, we're actually, if you think about the campaign, I think we feel very good about the Sun Belt. I think the Rust Belt, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And that works out too, because I like being here, and it's a beautiful time of year to be here. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing the entire country in a totally new light, and it's one of the coolest parts about running for vice president. We were talking about this on the boat, is you see the country from a perspective that you would just never get to see it from. People always ask, like, how are you doing? The schedule's really tough, and I'm honestly having a great time. And the fact that I get to bring my kids with me on some of this stuff is
that's
very cool, right? But honestly, when I ran for Senate in the state of Ohio, Patrick's sitting right back there. I'd ride around in Patrick's used Subaru, driving 5 hours to Youngstown and then back to Cincinnati.
You're taking a little different
now I fly around in
accommodation?
737 with my kids. Like, it's a much easier life to be vice president, actually, than it is to run for the Senate. So you're never going to hear me complain about it.
So that was a question I wanted to ask, is you'd mentioned earlier how much your life changes after President Trump picked you to be on the ticket.
Yeah.
What's been the best part of the trip so far?
It's definitely just seeing so many different parts of the country in rapid succession. So my wife and I actually, we keep this list both for ourselves but also for our kids, like the 50-state list. Right. And I think Usha and I are both in like the mid 40s, right? There's some states in like the Dakotas and then Alaska, Hawaii, and it's both of us have to go. Like, I've been to Montana, but she hasn't. She's been to Hawaii, but I haven't. So it's states that we go to get together. Like the kids, seeing the country from the perspective of like a 7-year-old kid, right? Who flies into Wisconsin.
Do they get what's going on?
They have no idea what's going on, right? They have no idea. I mean, our 7-year-old gets it a little bit. So like the best part is because, the kids have a Secret Service detail now, is we learned from one of my son's friends. His parents were like, do you know the kids play this game in school called Boss Man? And I was like, no, what is Boss Man? He's like, well, it's where one kid walks down the hallway flanked by 4 other kids on each side.
That's awesome.
a great game.
So they kind of get like that part of it. At least my 7-year-old does. But no, they just they go in and we go to Wisconsin and we go to the Cheese Castle. And the kids learn about cheese, or we go to the local ice cream spot and they learn a little bit about like the dairy industry. Or we go to Michigan and we learn about the cherries, and especially in Traverse City. And it's just, again, like, you see the country, certainly from my own selfish perspective, very new, but from my like 7-year-old's eyes, it's just a very, very cool thing. And that's definitely the best part of it, is because, I think anybody who has kids will tell you this, like the best part, or at least one of the best parts about having kids, is you get to sort of relive all these childhood adventures, but from a different perspective, and just seeing America from the eyes of a 7-year-old who's still so optimistic and hopeful, and he just, again, it makes me optimistic and hopeful about our country, because how can you not be when you see it through the eyes of a 7-year-old kid?
That's terrific.
Well, it definitely translates, and we could see it and we could hear it on the debate stage. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thanks, man.
I mean, this is a blast. It's a blast for us. This is something that came up 6-8 weeks ago. We're like, you think JD would want to go fishing? And then
Yes. The answer is always yes.
Yeah, one of your guys was like, he said, hell yes. So thanks a bunch for doing it. Thanks to the Safari Club for helping us out and putting this whole thing together. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
good luck out there. We can get this done?
We're going to get this done. Look, I feel extremely good about the race. Thank you guys for having me, but we've got to get out there and vote.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our guys are skeptical of early voting by mail. And, Josh, I don't love the election season thing. I like having election day, but it is what it is. And you got to play the game according to the rules that you have.
Yep.
So let's get out there and vote. There are 7 battleground states. I actually think we have a chance at winning all 7, but only if we bust our ass for the next 32 days.
Yeah. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So, first of all, what a great guy.
Yeah. I mean, you had mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the post-debate performance on our show, of how authentic he comes across, and because that is JD.
Yeah.
You get to go out fishing with him, you get to hang out with him. that's who he is. It came across during the debate, and that's why so many people liked it.
You know why? It's because he's from Ohio.
Oh, come on. Here we go.
Here we go.
But I mean, you can't not love the guy.
Yep.
He's the perfect guy for the perfect job at the perfect time. And I think we're just, I mean, obviously so lucky to be able to spend some time with him in Michigan. But the reality is his message is sort of unique in politics, not just because of his background, but because it's something like, you know how he talks about America is a nation. It's not just an idea.
Yeah.
There are actually people here who are depending on a government that's responsive to them. And you haven't heard that in a long time in politics. And so it's kind of the fresh take on leadership that people are wanting right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old saying in politics that's the coin of the realm is authenticity, and once you learn how to fake that, you got it made. And it's a joke because you can't fake authenticity, and that's, I think, what comes through, and I think that's what came through on our fishing trip. By the way, fellas, did you stack the coolers full of salmon?
That's a misconception. It was a cold morning, so the fish were very cold. It was early. They weren't ready to give much of a fight, but we got the job done on our boat.
You're going to see, because we're going to have the full fishing content for you next week, where you can see exactly what it was that these idiots were up to. But that we had a fishing competition, and they cheated.
Most secure fishing competition in history. Okay?
So that was a little bit of a daunting part of it, is that we came down here in the dark at like 5:30 in the morning, and there was like 1,000 boats out there. With
Once the sun rose, you saw there was like 40 gunboats and about 1,000 people with machine guns.
with helicopters going over top. Yeah. I don't know if that did anything to scare the fish. But
Maybe.
It couldn't have helped.
They didn't expect like a carrier group at 6 in the morning.
It's always important to have a backup plan, Josh.
We're all used to, including JD, which we were joking about. You're used to going out and like sitting on the water in solitude.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's the beauty of fishing, is you're there with your thoughts,
Right.
or your friends or your family or whomever. And it's kind of like the opportunity to unplug.
Yeah.
And then this experience, you look around, it's like, this feels pretty plugged. Feels like we're pretty close contact and just about anywhere, divers and stuff.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But a blast. And I think you got to see, and I think you'll get to see next week when you see all just how important all this stuff is to him. You know, it's cultural. It's a component that there's a ton of people, hundreds of thousands of people in this state of Michigan. I know where I grew up in Minnesota, certainly Wisconsin, I imagine in Ohio and Pennsylvania, that they make a huge part of their life. Outdoors activities, it's hunting, it's fishing, it's snowmobiling, it's all that kind of thing. And wouldn't it be nice to have somebody that is working in a White House that has any idea culturally what that's
That it matters to them.
Yeah.
Because you can, on a piece of paper, you can be like, yeah, I respect that. Like Tim Walz style, right? Where he's like, yeah, I own a gun, so therefore I understand your issues. Or someone who grew up with it and understands culturally how important this piece of American life is.
And that's why it's so important that those people show up and vote. And I love what JD said about, look, I don't like that we have election month in this country now.
Yeah.
We used to have just election day, but you got to play with the rules as they exist. That means absentee by mail, early vote. All of the people who care about the issues that we talked about with JD got to show up and vote.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in North Carolina. I'm going to be voting early. I can go on the website, check that they have it, make sure, because election day, you don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to storm? Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? You're going to have something you got to go do. Is there an emergency? If you bank that vote early, you know it's going to be there.
Yeah, like Northern Nevada in 2022.
Right.
Snowstorm.
Yeah, I don't think about it every day in my life. Unbelievable.
But look, I'm optimistic about this. I'm particularly optimistic after watching what JD has done this week in resetting this race. We talked a little bit about this on Tuesday and Thursday. Is you reset this race to a point where the choice is, do you like the way things are going, right? Is this economy what you want it to be? Is immigration, the border, what you want it to be? All these things she's responsible for.
Yep.
Right? You have a chance to get it back to where it needs to be. And I think the choice now has become evidently clear. And you see people reacting. We've interacted with folks here in Michigan and anywhere we go, people are starting to click in.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the energy. And I mean, I've seen the yard signs out here. I feel like Trump and Vance have a good chance of winning Michigan. Something's happening up here.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know? And I mean, you heard in the interview, he feels very comfortable about where they are in the Sun Belt. If they pick up these states up here in the Rust Belt, it's game over.
Yep.
Totally
You know?
game over.
And so, I mean, I hope everyone who's watching this is excited, is focused, is going to get out there and vote. And like, we're pretty excited too. That's why we're doing a third show this week and every subsequent week through Election Day.
Yeah, it ain't easy.
It ain't easy.
And by the way, for Wolf and everybody, putting this whole thing together didn't seem like a piece of cake either.
No.
Like, you're like, hey, I got an idea. We need like 15 cameras in the Kalamazoo River in first week of
Well, not
October.
to mention we had to get everybody in the phone short of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You know?
It's true. It's true. A lot of coordination went into this. Want to thank everybody behind the scenes for doing it because it was just an incredible effort to try to get this and capture it for you. You're going to see the full thing next week. But thanks for joining us today. Smug, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of a special episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much, JD Vance. Thank you so much to the Minions for tuning in. Remember, if you have not yet, subscribe on YouTube and tell your friends to tune in too. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.